Hey guys, so in this series we're going to be learning Next.js, but since Next.js is a full stack framework and it uses React for the front end and then something similar to Node for the back end, I'm expecting that you've already gone through the React playlist on my channel and at least part of the Node playlist. So if you haven't already done that, I suggest you go watch those two playlists first and then come back here. Okay, so this is basically what we're going to be building. I just drew this up in a drawing software. And to start out with, let's open up our folder. And in this video, I'm just going to cover like how to start your project and the basic file structure of a Next.js project. So, okay, this is the folder where all of my Next.js projects are, and I'm going to right click and open in terminal. So to create our project, we want to run npx. Remember, this is not npm, it's npx, and then create dash next dash app at latest. So this will run the create react app package, and it will use the latest version to create your project. Now it will ask you for a few things here. So it's saying it's going to install the create next app package. So I'm just going to hit enter here. Okay, now it's asking for a project name, so I'm going to call this Code With Me. And now it's asking us if we want to use TypeScript. Now, if you're not familiar with TypeScript, I suggest you hit no and use something like JavaScript instead. But I'm going to stick with TypeScript here because I'm building an actual project. So, okay, do we want to use ESLint? Yes. Tailwind, I do want to use. Tailwind is basically like an advanced version of CSS. So with Tailwind, you don't have to write the CSS yourself. You just use class names, and Tailwind will automatically handle putting the right CSS in place for you. Okay, now it's asking, would you like your code inside a src directory? So just say yes here. This is the default structure. And would you like to use app router? So as you can see, it says it's recommended. It's the default way. This is what routes your pages together and stuff. And we'll talk more about that once we get into the project. Next, it's asking if we want to use TurboPack for NextDev. So I'm just going to explain this a bit here. TurboPack is what's used for hot reloading. Hot reloading is basically if we run our page and we change something inside of the code. If we didn't have TurboPack, we would have to restart the server and then reload the page to see that change. But with TurboPack, as soon as we make a change in the code and save it, we can see the change on our website. So I'm just going to leave this enabled, and it's only enabled for the dev version. So once you publish this TurboPack won't be included in your packages. Okay, and now it's asking if we want to customize the import alias. So just leave this as default. I'll talk about the import alias later on, but now it's just setting up the project, and once it's done, we can head into it. Okay, so once it's done creating the project, which does take a bit of time, we can see that there's now a new folder in here called Code With Me, or whatever you named your project. So we can just cd into that, and then we can open Visual Studio Code in here by typing code and a dot. So, okay, this is the basic file structure of a Next.js project. If you notice, it's quite similar to React. So you have the same config files and stuff here. Basically, you have your package.json, which it has the scripts in it that we can run. So to start our project with TurboPack, we need to run npm run dev. And TurboPack is what we chose to install here. So it's the tool used for hot reloading. Basically, if we change something in our page, we don't need to restart the server. It will just reflect on the website. And if you notice here, TurboPack is only being used in the dev version. So once you actually build this and put it up, it won't be using that TurboPack package. Next, we'll look at import aliases a bit later. For now, let's just go through all the files here. So we have our package.json, which is similar to what we'd see in React. There's a few other packages here. We have postcss.config. This is for Tailwind. You don't need to worry about this. There's nothing you need to really do here. We have a basic README. So if you push this up to GitHub, just edit what's here. And then we have our tsconfig. So this one is our TypeScript config file. so you don't need to touch this at all. You can just leave it as it is. Obviously, if you've used something like JavaScript instead of TypeScript, you won't see this file. Then we have next config. So this is your config for Next.js. It's again similar to what you'd see in React. If you imported something that needs to be set up here, you can just do that. Also, if you want to use CORS on all of your public API endpoints, you can set that up here as well. Yeah, then there's this next envd.ts. You don't need to touch this at all, as it says here. This file should not be edited. And then your ESLint config. ESLint is basically an extension of VS Code, and it's what helps you write your JavaScript or TypeScript and all of that stuff. Again, you don't need to touch this file, just leave it as it is. And now we'll look at the folders. So we have the node modules folder, which is where any modules we installed through npm go. When you're setting up your Next.js project, it installs all of the dependencies by default that we need. So usually if you make a React app, you won't see the node modules folder until you type npm install. But on Next.js, it does this for you because it needs some packages to start out with. Then we have a public folder here with just some images inside of it. So anything that's in this folder can just be accessed by anyone. That's why it's called public. You can't put anything secret or anything in here. Then we have our src folder, which is basically the same thing as React. So this is the main folder that all of our project files go in. And you can see we have three important files here. One is the CSS file. This is just the global CSS file. It's where you put all of the main styles that you want for your website. Then we have layout.tsx, which I'll look at in a minute, but our main file is page.tsx. So in here, we have the main file which will display if we run our project. So I'm just going to run this for a second just to show you. So I'll do npm run dev. Okay, and it gives us two things here. One is a local, which is just localhost, and the other one is network. So this network address, you should be able to use it to access your site from a different device. So maybe if you want to test your website from a phone or something, you can use this address. But I'm just going to use the local one now. I'm going to hold down Control and click on it. And that will bring it up in my browser here. Now, one thing you might have noticed there is that it took like a few seconds to load. That's because by default, any pages we build here aren't built client side. That means the first time we load this page, if we look here in the terminal, it needs to compile that page on the server side. So again, I hope you guys have gone through the React and Node.js stuff. Basically what's happening is on React, it just renders the entire page in the browser. But in Next.js, it renders the entire page on the server, and then once it's done rendering, it sends that over. So the first time you load this up, it might take a few seconds, but after that, it's like almost instant because it's already compiled here. Okay, and since we have TurboPack enabled with hot reloading, if we go back to this page, and let's say we delete everything in here, and we just add an h1 tag, and we put like Theo here and save it. When we head back to the page, we can just see that the tag is up here. Now you might notice that this is small. Usually when you use an h1 tag, it's huge. The reason why it's doing this is because we're using Tailwind in the project, and Tailwind has some styles that override the default styles of some elements. So that's why this h1 is not as big as it should be here. But again, we can use the classes in Tailwind to make this bigger, but I'm not going to go over that right now. So the two files that are important here are layout and page. So layout is basically the template that your page gets pushed into. So when we load up a page, firstly it shows us all of this stuff, and then right here where it has this children tag, that's where it's injecting the stuff from page here. So this h1 is being injected into here, and then this entire thing is being displayed in the browser. And we can verify that by putting something under this. So I'll put another h1 tag, and I'll just say test here. And you can see that it shows test on the browser here. And what's good about this layout file is that if we create another page in here, that page will also use this layout file. So it's a good way to put in your navigation bar and your footer in here, and then you don't need to worry about that when you're creating the pages. Now NextJS actually uses a file-based navigation system. So if we wanted to create another page like /about, we can just create a new folder here and we can call it about, and inside of it we can put another page.tsx. So I'm going to create that. And okay, inside of here we can just do the stuff we do in our normal React projects: export default function. Okay, and we can just return like an h1 tag here that says about. And if I save this and now we head back to the site here, I can go to /about, and now it will show us that about page. So in Next.js, you don't need to set up routing or anything like that. You just need to create a folder with the route name that you want, and then have a page.tsx or JSX if you're using JavaScript file inside of it. And yes, it does need to be named page or it won't work. And you can also create another layout file in here if you want this to use a different layout file instead of the main one. And it would also work the same way if we created another folder inside of here. So I'm going to create a folder inside of this about folder, and I'll just call it test here. And inside of that, I'll make a page.tsx. And I'll just basically copy the same thing here. Okay, so I've just copied this over and I've changed this to test here. And now if we head back to our page and we go to /about/test, we'll now see the new test page that we created. So routing is a lot easier in Next.js than other full stack frameworks. It's just folder based, so we can create as many folders as we want, and that will work as routes. And yeah, with this, I think the basic file structure is easy to understand now. I think I've gone over everything. The only thing I haven't gone over is what we did right here. So we chose to keep the default import aliases, which uses this @ symbol. So I'm just going to explain that quickly. So at the top here, if we were importing something, for example test, we need to give a path here. If it was just installed with npm, we can just type the name of the module that's in node modules here. But if we're importing something from src app, maybe the page here, we'd have to type the full path here. But instead of doing that, we can use this @ symbol, and @ basically refers to the source directory here. So @ / and the next folder is called app. So we can just use app directly from here. And yeah, it just means we can use relative paths like this. We just use the @ symbol and it starts off from the source folder here instead of us writing the entire path. So yeah, that's what that custom alias did. And yeah, that's all I'm really going to cover in this video about Next.js. So I'll see you guys in the next video.